The Galactic Forum fell silent as Ambassador Chen stepped back from the podium, his face carved from stone. 23 species had gathered in the orbital chamber, their translators humming softly, waiting for humanity's response to the Crithian Accord. The Accord would limit resource extraction in contested systems, effectively starving Earth's outer colonies. Every delegate near humanity would protest, negotiate, demand amendments. Chen said nothing. He turned, gestured to his staff, and walked toward the exit. The Vrexian trade minister rose, mandibles clicking in confusion. Ambassador, the voting period remains open for... Boots echoed against crystalline floors. The 5 human delegates followed in formation, their expressions identical masks of professional detachment. Not anger, not frustration. Nothing? The chamber erupted. Delegates from a dozen worlds spoke simultaneously, their translations overlapping into chaos. The Forum Arbiter, a towering Keltheron whose species had mediated disputes for 3,000 years, raised 4 arms for silence. The human delegation will observe proper protocol. You cannot simply... The sound rang through the chamber like a closing tomb. What was that? Whispered the Torvashi observer. What just happened? Nobody answered, because nobody knew. Humanity had helped establish the Forum. They'd written half its bylaws. In 70 years of membership, they'd never missed a vote, never broken protocol, never walked out during active deliberation, until now. Queen Shlara of the Vescan Hive watched from her private observation sphere, her sensory tendrils pressed against the transparent alloy. She'd studied humans extensively since first contact. Her analysts had compiled behavioral profiles on every major human leader, cultural pattern recognition algorithms, predictive models for negotiation tactics. Humans were aggressive but rational. They bluffed, they leveraged, they bargained with fierce determination. They didn't simply leave. Replay the last 3 minutes, she commanded. Isolate the ambassador's facial micro-expressions. Her chief analyst, Benthar, manipulated holographic controls. Chen's face expanded before them, frozen at the moment he'd turned from the podium. Advanced sensors had captured every muscle twitch, every heat signature variation, every physiological marker the Vescan intelligence apparatus had learned to read. Nothing, my queen. No elevated stress markers, no suppressed rage indicators. His cortisol levels were actually declining. He was... Venthar paused, antenna quivering with uncertainty.
He was calm.
Charla's primary eyes narrowed. Calm was wrong. Humans were never calm when losing. They fought, they schemed, they found angles nobody else saw. The first Vescan contact team had learned that the hard way during trade negotiations in the Kepler Belt. Humans turned every disadvantage into leverage, every loss into a future bargaining chip. But calm, acceptance, that wasn't in their pattern. Monitor all human communications, Shlara ordered. Military bands, civilian networks, colony transmissions. I want to know what they're planning. The Crithian Accord passed with overwhelming support. 17 species voted in favor, 3 abstained. The contested resource zones would be redistributed according to development indices heavily favoring established civilizations. Earth's colonies in the Arcturus sector would receive minimal allocations. The Forum Arbiter declared the matter resolved. Delegates congratulated each other on maintaining galactic stability. Several species immediately began planning exploitation rights in the newly available territories. None of them noticed the silence spreading through human space. On Europa Station, Mining Supervisor Jackson received the forum results via tight beam transmission. She read it twice, then shut down the communication array. Pack everything, she told her crew. All of it. Now. Across the Arcturus colonies, the same scene repeated. Human settlements began systematic evacuation. Not panic flight. Organized, methodical withdrawal. They took their equipment, their prefab structures, their atmospheric processors. They removed their satellites. They even recovered their navigation beacons. The Confederation Intelligence Network noticed first. Their monitoring stations detected the movement, flagged it as anomalous. By the time they understood the scale, 12 human colonies had vanished from their holdings. Not destroyed, not conquered, simply abandoned. Where are they going? Demanded the Crithian High Commander. His species had pushed hardest for the Accord, anticipating easy acquisition of human infrastructure. Those colonies represent billions in invested technology. They can't just. And they were. Queen Shlara watched the tracking data cascade across her command displays. Every human vessel moving in the same direction. Not toward Earth. Not toward any established human world. Toward the galactic rim, where mapping was incomplete, and territorial claims ended? What are they doing? Venthar asked, echoing the question rippling through every intelligence service in known space. Shalara's tendrils curled tight with realization. She'd seen this behavior before, in historical records from Earth. When European colonists pushed too hard, indigenous peoples sometimes chose relocation over subjugation. When governments grew oppressive, populations migrated to frontiers rather than submit. Humans had a word for it, one their translators struggled to convey with proper weight. Exodus. Send immediate communication to all forum members, Shalara commanded. Humanity isn't retreating. They're leaving. Leaving, say, everything. The forum. The established territories. The entire structure of galactic civilization. Shalara's voice carried a weight her analyst had never heard before. We thought we were managing them. We thought restricting their resources would force compliance. She gestured at the tracking data, at the steady flow of human vessels disappearing into unexplored space. We just made them conclude they're better off without us. Their embassy had been evacuated, all systems purged, all databases wiped clean. They'd left behind only a single message, projected in holographic text across every official communication channel. We wish you well. We will not be returning. That was all. No demands. No threats. No explanation. Just goodbye. The galaxy watched in growing terror as more human colonies dissolved, their populations flowing toward the rim like water finding new channels. Military analysts ran scenarios, trying to understand what humanity might build out in the darkness beyond mapped space, beyond oversight, beyond the forum's carefully maintained balance of power. Queen Shalara understood before most. She'd studied human history deeply enough to recognize the pattern. Every time humanity faced walls, they sought open horizons. Every time they encountered rules they found unjust, they left to build their own systems. The forum hadn't controlled humanity. The forum had simply been useful to them. Until it wasn't. In her private chamber, Shalara composed a message that would cost her considerable political capital. She addressed it directly to Ambassador Chen, though she had no confirmation he would receive it. The words came slowly, carefully weighted. Ambassador, the Vescan Hive did not support the Krythian Accord. We abstained because we understood the stakes. I have studied your people extensively. I know what happens when humanity feels cornered. I know what happens when they're underestimated. The galaxy is about to learn, and I fear we will not like the lesson. She paused, tendrils trembling, then added one final line. Some of us would prefer to remain allies, if that possibility still exists. The message transmitted into the void, toward the expanding sphere of human ships. Shalara didn't know if it would matter. The momentum was already building, the course already set. Humanity had decided the galaxy's rules no longer served them. Now everyone would discover what humans built when they wrote their own. The observation deck of the forum station offered a view of the sector where human colonies once glittered like scattered diamonds. Now the darkness spread, station lights winking out one by one as humanity pulled away from everything they'd built in established space. Delegates gathered at the windows, watching the exodus, feeling the first cold touch of fear. They'd thought they were managing a dangerous species. Containing a threat. Maintaining order. They had actually been valued enough to engage with. Until they proved they didn't value humanity in return, the Krythian High Commander stared at the darkening sector, his confidence finally cracking. What have we done? Nobody answered. The silence in the forum chamber felt heavy as a grave, and in that silence warships began appearing at the borders of Krythian space. Not human warships. Ships from the dozen species who'd suddenly realized that if humanity could leave, they could choose who to leave unprotected. The balance the forum had maintained for centuries began tilting. Without humanity's military strength anchoring one side, without their industrial capacity filling supply chains, without their unpredictable innovation forcing everyone else to evolve, the careful structure started to crack. Queen Shalara watched it begin and wondered if her message had been too late, wondered if humanity would even care about one species' attempted alliance when 23 had declared them expendable. The answer came 3 days later. A single human courier ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of Vescan territory. It broadcast on diplomatic channels requesting audience with the Queen. Not the forum, not the collective, just Shalara. Her security advisors counseled caution. The ship could be weaponized. This could be a trap. Humans were unpredictable, especially now. Shalara ignored them. She granted the audience personally. The human who materialized in her throne room was young, female, carrying nothing but a secure data cylinder. She bowed with precise respect, neither subservient nor casual. Queen Shlara. I am Specialist Rivera, sent by Ambassador Chen. He received your message. And his response? Rivera's expression remained professionally neutral, but something flickered in her eyes. Not anger, something colder. The ambassador appreciates that the Vescan Hive understood the nature of the Crithian Accord. He acknowledges that your abstention reflected genuine respect for humanity's position. There was more. There had to be more. However, Rivera continued, humanity's decision to withdraw from the Forum is final. We will not be returning to a structure that views us as a problem to be managed, rather than a civilization to be respected. That decision is not negotiable. The words landed like stones. Shlara felt her political hopes crumbling. The alliance she'd envisioned, the partnership that might have elevated the Vescan Hive to unprecedented influence, was dissolving before it could form. Then Rivera held out the data cylinder.
But Ambassador Chen authorized me to present this a separate agreement.
Not with the Forum, with the Vescan Hive alone. Trade protocols, navigation sharing in rim sectors, mutual defense considerations. He suggests that humanity's departure from the Forum doesn't preclude bilateral relationships with civilizations who demonstrate genuine partnership. Shlara's tendrils quivered. She reached for the cylinder, her mind already racing through implications. If humanity was willing to negotiate outside Forum structure, if they were building a new framework for interaction, the ambassador wants you to understand something, Rivera said, her voice dropping slightly. The Forum made a critical error. They assumed humanity needed them more than they needed humanity. They thought restricting our resources would force compliance. They didn't understand that humans have spent our entire history breaking free from systems that claim to control us for our own good. I studied your history, Shlara said quietly. I knew this was possible. The Forum is about to discover what happens when humanity stops playing by rules we didn't choose. Out on the rim, beyond their oversight, we're going to build something new. Something that doesn't require everyone's permission to exist. And we're going to invite civilizations who actually want to work with us rather than manage us. Rivera's expression finally shifted, a slight smile touching her lips. The ambassador asked me to tell you that the Vescan Hive can be first on that list. If you want to be... Shalara held the data cylinder, feeling its weight, understanding what it represented. Not just trade agreements. An opportunity, a chance to align with humanity before the rest of the galaxy realized what they'd lost. Tell Ambassador Chen I accept his terms. The Vescan Hive will be proud to be humanity's first partner in this new endeavor. He'll be pleased. We'll be in contact with specific coordinates within the week. The Forum doesn't need to know about this arrangement. Not yet. The specialist left as quickly as she'd arrived. Shlara remained in her throne room, turning the cylinder over in her tendrils, already planning. Her advisors would call this dangerous. The Forum would view separate agreements as betrayal if they discovered them. There would be political consequences. But Shlara had studied humanity long enough to understand momentum. The Forum had made their choice. They'd decided humanity was expendable, that their rules mattered more than their relationships. Now they would learn what humans had always known. Respect cannot be mandated. It must be earned. And lost, it cannot be reclaimed. The exodus continued. More colonies emptied. More ships vanished toward the rim. The Forum convened repeatedly, trying to formulate responses, but every proposal died in committee. Some species wanted to pursue humanity, force them back into compliance. Others advocated blockades. A few suggested military action, though nobody was foolish enough to formally propose war. The Crithians pushed hardest for intervention. They'd expected easy acquisition of human territories, not complete abandonment. Their economy had been structured around anticipated resource access. Now their planning lay in ruins, and their political leadership faced serious challenges. "We must send envoys," the High Commander insisted during an emergency forum session. "Reopen negotiations. Offer modified terms." The Forum Arbiter's expression suggested deep skepticism. On what basis? We passed the Crithian Accord legally. Humanity chose to leave rather than accept it. They've violated no laws, broken no treaties. They simply exercised their right to withdraw. They're destabilizing the entire sector. No, Queen Shlara said quietly from her delegation pod. We destabilized the sector. We created a governing structure that assumed humanity would always choose engagement over independence. The Crithian representative turned on her, mandibles flaring. The Vescan Hive has been unusually sympathetic to human positions lately. Perhaps you should recuse yourself from these deliberations. I studied humanity while you planned to exploit them. I understood their patterns while you counted your anticipated profits. Now you face the consequences of treating a spacefaring civilization like a resource to be allocated. I bear no responsibility for your miscalculation." The chamber erupted in argument. Species took sides, old alliances fractured, new tensions emerged. The careful balance that had maintained galactic stability for generations was cracking, and at the center of every fracture lay the same question: what would humanity build out in the darkness? The answer began emerging 6 months later. Automated probes detected massive construction in a previously unmapped sector, not colonies. Infrastructure on a scale that made foreign worlds look provincial, shipyards, industrial complexes, agricultural stations that could feed billions. All of it built with the efficiency and innovation that made humanity simultaneously valuable and terrifying to their galactic neighbors. But that wasn't what made the forum tremble. The beacon made them tremble. It appeared suddenly, broadcasting on all standard frequencies, speaking every major galactic language with perfect clarity. The Free Systems Compact welcomes all civilizations interested in mutual cooperation without hierarchical governance. No species superior. No votes weighted by age or influence. No resources allocated by committee. Equal partnership.
Equal voice. Equal opportunity.
Coordinates available upon request. Humanity invites you to build something better. The message repeated continuously. Impossible to ignore, impossible to suppress. Within a week, 3 minor species announced they were leaving the forum to join the compact. Within a month, 7 more followed. None of them were major powers, but their departure sent shockwaves through the established order. The forum wasn't just losing humanity, it was losing its monopoly on galactic governance. Emergency sessions became permanent. Delegates who'd congratulated each other on passing the Crithian Accord now blamed each other for the exodus. The arbiters struggled to maintain orders. Centuries of diplomatic protocol dissolved into recrimination and panic. Queen Shlara watched it unfold with a mixture of satisfaction and sorrow. She'd tried to warn them. She'd abstained from the accord, signaled her disapproval in every way protocol allowed. They'd ignored her, convinced that their experience and authority meant more than her analysis. Now they paid the price. The Vescan Hive received its coordinates to the compact 3 weeks after Rivera's visit. Shalara sent a carefully selected delegation sworn to secrecy to investigate humanity's new creation. They returned transformed, speaking of possibilities that made the forum's rigid hierarchies seem archaic and constraining. "It's not just about resources," her chief delegate reported, his voice filled with wonder. "They've redesigned everything. Dispute resolution without arbiter species. Technology sharing without patent hoarding. Defense cooperation without surrender of sovereignty. Every species brings their strengths. Nobody claims superiority." "And humanity?" Shlara asked. "What role do they claim?" "They call themselves founding partners, not rulers. Not administrators, partners. And they mean it, my queen. I've seen the documentation. Humans hold no special voting power, no elevated status. They built the framework, then made themselves equal within it." Shlara absorbed this, her understanding of human psychology deepening further. They hadn't left to build an empire. They'd left to build an alternative, a demonstration that galactic civilization could function without the forum's ancient hierarchies and accumulated privileges. It was, she realized, the most devastating response humanity could have chosen. Not war. Not isolation. The Free Systems Compact grew steadily. More species arrived, drawn by promises of equality and opportunity. Human shipyards worked constantly, building vessels for new partners, sharing technology the forum carefully hoarded. Agricultural stations fed growing populations. Research facilities tackled problems the forum had declared too expensive or too risky. And through it all, humanity remained deliberately, conspicuously equal. They attended councils but didn't dominate them. They contributed expertise but didn't demand deference. They proved that their exodus hadn't been about superiority, it had been about freedom. The Crithian economy collapsed first. Without access to human industrial capacity or the territories they'd expected to claim, their overextended infrastructure couldn't sustain itself. Political upheaval followed economic disaster. The High Commander who'd pushed hardest for the Accord faced removal from power. Other forum species felt the ripples. Trade routes that had relied on human worlds found themselves disrupted. Defense agreements that had assumed human military support suddenly looked dangerously inadequate. Research initiatives that had counted on human innovation stalled and failed. The forum had thought itself indispensable. It discovered instead that it had been dependent. 2 years after humanity's departure, Queen Shlara made her choice public. The Vescan Hive formally withdrew from the Galactic Forum and requested membership in the Free Systems Compact. The announcement sent shockwaves through established space. The Vescan Hive wasn't a minor species. They were a significant power, with extensive territory and advanced technology. Their departure wasn't just embarrassing for the Forum, it was devastating. "You're committing political suicide," the Forum Arbiter told Shlara during their final meeting. "The Hive has been part of galactic governance for 900 years. You're throwing away everything your predecessors built." "My predecessors built something worth preserving," Shlara replied calmly. "You destroyed it when you passed the Krythian Accord. When you decided that managing humanity mattered more than respecting them. When you proved that the Forum serves established powers at the expense of all others. We maintained stability. You maintained your own privilege. Humanity showed us there's a difference." Shlara rose from her delegation pod for the last time. "I studied them, Arbiter. I understood what they would do when cornered. I tried to warn you. You didn't listen. Now you face the consequences." She walked toward the exit, her delegation following in perfect formation.
At the threshold, she paused. Humanity didn't destroy the Forum.
"You did. The moment you proved it existed to control rather than to serve. They simply gave the rest of us somewhere better to go." The door sealed behind her with the same finality that had marked humanity's departure 2 years earlier. The sound echoed through the chamber, and in that echo, more species heard their future calling. Within a year, the Galactic Forum had lost 40% of its membership. The exodus became a flood as species realized they had choices, that alternatives existed, that the ancient hierarchies weren't inevitable. Humanity watched from the rim, building their compact, welcoming new partners, proving every day that galactic civilization could function without the Forum's suffocating structure. They didn't gloat, they didn't demand apologies. They simply continued building something better. Ambassador Chen stood on an observation deck in the compact's central station, watching ships arrive from across known space. Species seeking opportunity, seeking equality, seeking the simple dignity of being treated as partners rather than subjects. Queen Shlara joined him at the window, her tendrils reflecting satisfaction. "You knew they would come." "We hoped," Chen corrected gently. "Humanity has learned painful lessons about assuming we understand other species' choices. We built something we believe in. We made it available. What others chose to do with that opportunity was always theirs to decide. The Forum is failing. The Forum failed the moment it valued control over cooperation. Its collapse is merely the visible result." Chen turned to face her directly. "But we take no pleasure in it, Queen Shlara. Many good beings remain trapped in that structure, loyal to something that no longer serves them. We hope they'll eventually join us. Until then, we build. We demonstrate. We prove there's a better way. And if the Forum decides to take military action, to force compliance," Chen's expression hardened slightly, "then they'll discover why humanity has spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of warfare. We left seeking peace. We won't hesitate to defend it." She'd studied human military history thoroughly. "The same species that built gardens also built weapons of terrifying efficiency. The same minds that composed symphonies also designed strategies that made combat a science. Humanity's capacity for creation was matched only by their capacity for destruction. The Forum would be wise to remember that. But wisdom," Shlara reflected, "had never been the Forum's strength. Only authority, only tradition, only the assumption that age-granted superiority and compliance could be commanded. Humanity had taught the galaxy a different lesson. That respect must be earned. That partnership requires equality. That any structure treating civilizations as resources rather than allies eventually collapses under the weight of its own arrogance. The Free Systems Compact continued growing, its beacon calling across the darkness, offering something the Forum never had: genuine choice, genuine opportunity, genuine respect. And in the empty chambers of the Galactic Forum, remaining delegates stared at vacant seats and asked themselves the question that would haunt them for generations: how did we lose them? The answer was simple, though they struggled to accept it. They'd never truly had them at all. Humanity had chosen engagement because it seemed mutually beneficial. When that calculus changed, when the Forum proved itself more interested in control than cooperation, the choice became equally simple: leave. Build better. Invite others to join. The galaxy had watched in terror as humans deserted the Forum. They had feared chaos, collapse, conflict. What they got instead was transformation. A demonstration that the old ways weren't inevitable, that new frameworks could emerge. that civilization could evolve beyond ancient hierarchies if someone was brave enough to take the first step into darkness. Humanity had taken that step, and in the void beyond mapped space, they'd built something luminous. Something that called to every species tired of being managed, restricted, allocated, controlled. Something that whispered the most dangerous idea in galactic history. You deserve better. The echo of that whisper would reshape everything. Not through war, not through conquest. Through the simple, devastating power of a better example. And Queen Shalara, standing beside Ambassador Chen, watching ships arrive in endless streams, understood that she'd chosen correctly. She'd studied humanity long enough to recognize truth when they spoke it, long enough to understand that the real terror wasn't in their departure. It was in what they'd proven, that the galaxy's oldest institutions existed only because nobody had built alternatives. Until now. The future was being written in the darkness beyond the rim, written by species who'd chosen partnership over hierarchy, equality over tradition, possibility over control. And humanity, terrifying in their competence, humbling in their restraint, stood at the center of it all, not as rulers, as partners, as equals who happened to have taken the first step. The galaxy would never be the same. And somewhere in the failing halls of the Galactic Forum, delegates who'd voted for the Crythian Accord finally understood what they'd actually chosen. Not stability.
Not control.
Obsolescence.